If I asked you to picture art in Beijing, you probably think of the Forbidden City with its priceless paintings, ancient ceramics. However, there's great contemporary art to be found in Beijing, and sometimes the museums housing them are works of art themselves. And truth is, we need art now more than ever, what with the year 2020 having been marked by suffering and upheaval. And that's why in this episode of Travelogue, I'll be taking you to some of the best contemporary art museums that Beijing has to offer.
To do that, we'll be travelling to the suburbs of the Chinese capital. Our first stop is something of a photographer's paradise.
This is the Red Brick Art Museum. It's actually one of the best contemporary art museums in Beijing. Regularly holds world-class exhibitions, even has permanent installations from artists like Olafur Eliasson and Dan Graham. But actually the real exhibit is this museum itself, because it's built as a contemporary version of the classical Chinese garden.
The Red Brick Museum is located an hour's drive north from central Beijing. I've asked my architect friend Dingni to show me around. She explains that in a traditional Chinese courtyard residence, the house and garden are connected, so entering the museum is like entering a house.
From here you see a really big, huge wall, right? That is small circle as the entrance. In order to make you feel relaxed, informal, so they get everything small in the beginning and they're gonna opening up later on.
It's as if you're entering a new world, and you're immediately drawn to the atrium in the centre.
So this is what, like the living room? Or?
It's actually like a ceremony space, and then it's also reflects the Chinese courtyard, the yard in the centre.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of like a campsite.
It's pretty obvious how this museum gets its name. The use of red bricks everywhere lends it a sense of uniformity, and the bricks are used to create complex geometric shapes that look like something out of an M.C. Escher picture. With all these frames and walkways constantly changing your perspective, it can get quite dizzying.
I'm already kind of lost, to be honest.
When you see the red brick, it's kind of the exhibition hall. And when you see this grey brick, it's representing the garden. So when you see the contrast, which means that you're changing the zones.
So it's like a hint.
Yeah.
So this is the garden then? Just like this?
Actually, it's a division between the museum and the garden. So when you see the water, it's kind of divided two parts. And then we're walking on this bridge. It's kind of like represented the corridor in Chinese garden. And now you see this frame, and each one are different. What behind it is a new world.
The garden's actually not that big, but these narrow alleys make it seem like you're lost in a vast labyrinth.
Are you sure this is a part of the garden?
Of course.
Okay.
It's trying to get you lost inside.
Most people hate being lost.
And that's the excitement part of the traditional Chinese garden.
What, to enjoy being lost?
Yeah.
Sudden opening.
There's this constant contraction and expansion of your field of vision. The overall effect is that you're never bored walking through this garden.
I think what's also quite interesting is that maybe in a Western garden, it feels like often it's vast. The Chinese garden, I don't know, it almost feels like feminine because it's small, it's delicate, and it makes you find little surprises at every corner.
The Chinese garden, they have several layers, so you can't recognize where you are. It's not about the ending of the journey, but the experience and the time you're spending on your journey, a journey to discover yourself.
In a way, that's what Red Brick's current exhibition is about. Entitled 2020 Plus, the works here try to help us understand and make sense of this difficult year. I particularly like this video series. It's called I Will Die, and the artist filmed almost 1,000 people saying this phrase.
It's an interesting piece of art. I mean, we all know we're going to die. It's a fact, isn't it? But especially this year when we're faced with so much death and suffering, and we most likely have friends and family who have been affected by the coronavirus, it just becomes that much more solid our mortality.
A few pieces in this exhibit explore the theme of our collective unconscious, how we often just blindly follow in the footsteps of everyone else. Sometimes profound reflections on life can be a rich source of inspiration for artists. This piece is by the late Chen Zhen, who created crystal sculptures of his organs.
他当时为什么是要做这个作品？
也是陈真老师创作于2000年的，2000年也是他生命的最后一年。他可能更多的思考的是他自己本身的生命以及死亡对他来讲的这样的一个意义。
看着这个作品，生命是很美，但是非常脆弱。
其实我们也是希望通过这些艺术作品，能够引起更多观众对于自我的这样的一个思考，或者说是对于人类与自然这样的一个关系的思考。
These works of art challenge our pre-existing beliefs. What is true and what is false depends on where you're standing.
本来我们可能会觉得线球这种东西是比较柔软，但是通过它体量的这样的一个摆放，以及这样放射状的这样的一个形态，其实整个线球是呈现一种攻击的这样的一个态势。 发光的这样的一个
对，真白应该是挺尖的。
但是通过这样密集的这样的一个摆放以及灯光的照射，呈现这种闪闪发光的状态，有些观众他可能会觉得，哎，像是这种皮草啊、皮毛啊这种柔软的质感。对。
I feel like every artwork here is trying to make us look from a different perspective. To make us think about the status quo and how easily it can be changed. Through their works, the artists are trying to have a conversation with us. But even if we don't understand what they're trying to say, sometimes viewing art helps us realize things about ourselves.
I guess the point of this is to show that we too will disappear and our actions and deeds might be recorded for a while, but you know, life is impermanent, isn't it? I've come to the private art museum of Luohong, who is the founder of China's largest bakery chain, but he's actually better known for his wildlife photography. And the theme of his museum here is utopia.
Though it's just an hour's drive from the city centre, a visit to Luohong's art museum is like being transported into the middle of the African savannah.
It's almost like bizarre, because it's right next to this main road.
Yeah, and you were questioning where I am. Is it a real world? Am I in a real place?
Yeah.
And then you see the entrance of the museum.
In stark contrast to the vivid colours outside, the museum's lobby is immaculately white. It's as if you've entered a dream.
He looks like a rock star.
Yeah, and here you see the purely white, and now it's the purely black. So you transform to another space that he created.
Yeah, it's like I'm straddling the border between white and black,
Yeah.
two different spaces,
Yeah.
right?
Luohong's childhood dream was to be a photographer. And now, he travels the globe capturing the beauty of our natural world.
So after seeing this
In this gallery, you don't just view his photos, you're taken on a visual journey.
Yeah, that's a great view. It's kind of like watching a film, like a good film, you know?
Yeah.
You go through like each act, like all of the places that we've been through with each act, and then this is the end, and then the credits are rolling.
Yeah.
But our journey hasn't finished.
So now we're stepped into the Wonderland.
Wow.
A pocket of paradise in suburban Beijing. Who knew?
So they've gone and created their own reality within our shared reality.
Yeah, maybe in Chinese culture, they're trying to create a wonderland in their real lifetime, just beside them.
That's a really good point, trying to create the ideal world with, with your own power, right?
Yeah.
And it's even more even more pertinent for this year.
Yeah.
You know, when the thing that everyone wants to do is escape from the coronavirus, right?
Yeah. Stay in a wonderland for a while and then make our effort to create a new one for us.
Yeah.
This museum's design was inspired by Peach Blossom Spring, a Chinese fable about a fisherman stumbling upon a utopia. In a way, Luo Hong is a bit like the fisherman. In his quest to photograph nature's beauty, he sometimes catches glimpses of paradise. What this museum has done is collect all those glimpses, so that we too can see what paradise looks like.
Can't believe this sort of site exists on Earth. Luo Hong was named climate hero by the UN for raising awareness about environmental protection. Especially when you see the Earth from this sort of perspective, you see how incredibly delicate and beautiful it is. You realize that our #1 priority in life should be to continue protecting this kind of beauty.
Of course, not just anyone could take these photos.
对，这一张的话是在冰岛，当时呢就是为了等落日这样的一个光线，在水里面站了3个多小时。
From the Arctic to the Antarctic, the Americas to Africa, Luo Hong seems to have been practically everywhere. The photos he's taken along the way help us to see just how much beauty there is in this world.
This is your favorite photo?
Yes.
这是你最喜欢那幅画是吗? Like, what are you looking at?
I'm looking at the eyes. Yeah, I think they're cute. 这个景色很美，因为我感觉好看。我是大熊，你是小熊。
啊，我是小熊，你是大熊啊？
对。
这样子啊？
Because it looks very unreal and photoshopped.
That's a good thing.
Yes, you're never gonna get this again, like elephants running in the sunset with dust everywhere.
It is pretty perfect, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I guess everyone's idea of paradise is different, but it's enough to know that somewhere on Earth it exists. Of all the animals Luo Hong has photographed, the black swan has always stood out as the most elegant. And so he named his bakery chain's most exclusive line of cakes after them. These edible works of art were designed by Keiko Nagai, a Michelin 3-star pastry chef.
Absolutely amazing. Wow. The apple was this absolutely incredible jelly that you could drink, and it was just lifted by the biscuit base, and oh wow, that was an incredible feeling.
All of this began when Luo Hong couldn't find a decent cake for his mother's birthday. He opened his own bakery, calling it Hollyland, and today it has over 1,000 outlets across China.
I guess it must have been quite difficult during the pandemic lockdown.
A little bit, yeah. We closed like 4 months, but we cannot complain. The business is great, and our guests came back, so we are really happy, and everything's fine. Yes, but for sure it was a difficult moment, but for everybody in the world.
For now, it looks like business is back to normal, and they'd even prepared a surprise for me. How did they know it was my birthday?
Oh my God, thank you so much. Let's make a wish for the world.
Coming up next, we'll visit the museum of an artist who's been called the Chinese Picasso, before checking out the ultra-minimalist Song Art Museum.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better, see GTN. See the difference.
This is the museum of Han Meilin. He's one of China's most prolific artists, and you might actually recognize his work from the mascots for the 2008 Summer Olympics. He also designed the logo for Air China, but he's also a fantastic calligrapher, painter. He dyes fabrics, he makes ceramics. He is a true polymath.
His museum is located on the east side of town and is open to the public free of charge.
So today this museum is quite in the Oriental style. So you see the central axis here, it's a circle here, and then a square at the back.
Right.
And it's actually symmetry when you see the building behind, the lightness and the heaviness there.
Right, there's that contrast, isn't there?
From elephants to dragons, his sculptures populate the museum grounds.
The dragon there
Yeah.
is Han Meilin's art piece actually.
Right.
Breaking out through the wall.
Guarding the museum. That's actually a pretty cute dragon. It's kind of almost sort of dopey. Its eyes are looking in opposite directions.
It's hard to believe that all these different styles of artwork were created by one man.
Yeah, these are pretty cute.
Yeah, it is. And this side is small drawings, and that side is gigantic sculpture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, he really does do everything, doesn't he?
Yeah. And this corridor space shows the contrast between the two, actually.
From the micro to the macro.
Han Meilin was born just before World War II and has suffered many hardships in life. Yet his artworks are filled with a sense of positivity and vitality.
Just love his animals, you know, whether they're monkeys or little baby elephants. He just captures their essence so well. They're also incredibly cute. At first I thought, you know, it was just because he's talented, but in actual fact, look at all the sketches he does. All of the same animal, but each one distinctly different.
Through simple strokes, he conveys his message.
这个条码我也很喜欢，因为它看起来很快，看起来像个千里马，像个穿着瓢虫衣服的人。
They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. And indeed, Han Meilin is able to express ideas and emotions easily through his art.
怀孕了，感染一下艺术气息。我很喜欢他母语子的那个方面，那个雕塑。
对，因为马上嘛。
对，也是因为这个疫情的原因嘛。因为我婆婆经常说一句话，她说今年就是说最幸运的就是活下来了。
It's hard not to smile when you're looking at the mother and child sculptures.
母子之间就是相辅相成的，孩子给母亲，带来的是更加应该去学习成长。孩子呢，在母亲的怀抱里呢，是先接受温暖，到长大成人之后呢，再去散发这种力量。
Mr. Han created this selection according to his own experience. When he was only 2 years old, his father passed away. He and his 2 brothers, they were all brought up by his mother alone.
Does that have to do with why he chose to use bronze? Because like traditionally bronze is used in ancient China for like ritual objects and...
Mr. Han wanted to change people's attitudes towards the bronze. He used the bronze to create something full of love, full of harmony.
Han Meilin was designated a UNESCO Artist for Peace for his efforts in promoting art and art education in China.
Whenever we talk about porcelains, we think about plates, cups, and mugs. But Mr. Han used sculptures to do porcelain.
Oh, wow.
So it looks like more contemporary, more modern.
Though Han Meilin's works may look like they're rooted in traditional Chinese art, through his experimentation with different mediums, he's constantly redefining what it means for art to be traditional. He's a true multidisciplinary artist for whom anything is possible, as long as he puts his mind to it.
It's hard to imagine that one man created all of this, especially because it just looks like a giant print. But here, Hamelian was actually more of a scribe than he was a creator. All of these symbols, these pictographs, actually exist in China. They're basically hieroglyphs. It's just that we've forgotten what they mean. And so here, language becomes art. Art that transcends the boundary of language. I've come to Song Art Museum, which gets its name from the 199 pine trees found planted across its grounds. And the architecture of the museum is incredibly beautiful, incredibly sleek, almost minimalistic, but it's also meant to be the perfect exhibition space, a blank canvas.
Song means pine tree in Chinese. The museum here is meant to be viewed like a hand scroll, a kind of long horizontal painting that's unfold, like a roll of film, to be viewed from right to left.
Actually, the starting point is at the other end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the starting point is the door in front.
So now we have to turn around and head this way.
Yeah.
So this is the scroll.
Yeah.
So he's forcing us on this linear path, this journey.
I think architect, you're trying to use the advantage of the long, narrow site to compose every element into a long drawing.
You view each section of a hand scroll as it's rolled out. Here, the museum's white walls are the canvas, and its pine trees, and even the two of us, part of the painting.
The purely white space gives you a space to breathe, and that's actually the theme in Chinese painting. Each frame, they have a breathe space. Yeah, we'd call it empty space or blank space.
But what you're talking about is the Chinese concept of liu bai, right?
Yeah.
The empty space or blank space.
Yeah.
But isn't that just negative space?
In Chinese culture, like the liu bai is kind of something in between. It's blurred.
So instead of the black and white, it's the space in between the black and white.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a clear border to define what blank space is. It can be a canvas. Maybe it can be just part of the grass.
Yeah.
I think so.
Like in the West, you want to define, and in China, you kind of leave the definition to your own imagination.
I think both are quite good.
Right.
This museum is an architectural marvel. Its minimalist design removes all distractions from your vision, giving you room for discovery and contemplation.
Actually, this is one of the interesting spaces I would like to show you here. When you step backward, you feel like it's exterior spaces. But when you look up, it's kind of an atrium, so it's an interior space. You see the light penetrate to the ground to light up this art piece.
Right.
But then this boundary between the exterior and interior is actually blurred through a distance to the window.
Okay, so if I'm step back, then I'm inside. We move forward, and we're still inside.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's actually changed the idea that you're talking about exterior and interior. And you see the light coming down.
The museum space is designed to give us as pure an experience with its artworks as possible. The current exhibition is called 2020 and displays works by 20 artists from 20 galleries.
2020的展这么快做出来，真的挺不容易的。
是，的确，疫情也带给我们很多新的思考。我觉得这美术馆也是需要这个重新的出发。这件作品呢是比较喜欢的这个劳尔斯切克尼的书架间隙系列作品的其中一件。比较喜欢这个作品的这种空间感，我们能看见这个光线、物体以及结构在这种物理空间里的表现力。
放到2020年，它的这个意思会有没有一些改变？
它让我们
让观众看到的
更多的时间去思考。2020年就是让我们思考的一年。
Art gives our overworked brains a much-needed break, and a good museum gives us space to breathe. Sometimes art can be cathartic, for the viewer as well as the creator. Here, looking at this piece of art, you'll experience both tension and relief.
That was physically painful to watch. I mean, there's an excerpt on the wall over there, and basically, I guess the meaning of this piece of art is that everything is cyclical. You know, we'll always go through periods of peace and periods of turmoil, and what is happening right now in the year 2020 will repeat again in the future, but we will have a period of peace after this. So I guess, you know, there's hope. I just got to get out of here before this starts up again. Can't handle it.
In addition to viewing works of art here, you can also create your own.
I've managed to squeeze myself into a still life painting class. It's been like more than like 2 decades since I last did art. I was never good at painting, but we'll see. It's fun nevertheless. Earlier she was like, mix the colors, and so I started mixing the colors, and then I made, you know, my base is going to be green, obviously, because it's all green. And she was like, it doesn't have to look like how it's supposed to look. It doesn't have to be green. I was like, but I just used all my green.
Never mind. After all, this isn't a technical class. We're here to express ourselves through art. Everyone's welcome. Some of the students have never painted before, yet they're still able to create wonderful pieces of art.
Doesn't matter, doesn't have to look exactly like what's outside of the window. The journey is more important than the destination, isn't it?
就是想画出那个风吹草的那种感觉，看着这个草地，然后在这个氛围当中形成的这个色彩。
那我们看看这一幅画里边如何融合了2个人的思想。
那我们这个画其实也分为2部分，就一部分上面是说我们的上半年过得比较混沌，然后下半年我们就很想去海边里去冲浪，然后也想就是乘风破浪。
I guess the great thing about art is that it's always there for you when you need to express yourself.
You know, I've visited a couple of art museums in the past and seen contemporary works of art, but I never really understood nor took the time to understand what they meant. But this time around, after being shown around so many beautiful art museums, being told why artists did things the way they did, I've now come to the realization that art is not for the sake of art, art is for us. And that, especially in the year 2020, after all that's happened, art is a form of therapy, it's a form of hope and salvation. And I hope that by watching this episode of Travelogue, you might also feel the same way too.